그러면 이어서 오늘 컨퍼런스를 위해 특별히 자리해 주신 분들 모시고 특별 대담을 진행하겠습니다. 전 세계 참가자들과 함께하는 국제 행사인 만큼 지금부터는 영어로 진행되는 점 양해해 주시기를 부탁드리겠습니다. 통역 수신기 착용하시고 함께해 주시면 되겠고요. 채널 1번이 한국어입니다. Once again, thank you very much all the participants for attending today's conference. Today we have very special guests for the 5th annual World Aviation Conference. We have Mr. Thomas Frey, founder and executive director of the DaVinci Institute, who is one of the best futurists selected by Google. And it is my great honor to introduce Dr. Jiyoon Kim. She is one of the most renowned political analysts here in Korea. Two special guests will make the special dialogue on the topic of recalibrating the aviation industry for the coming era of dramatic change. Please allow me to invite Dr. Jiyoon Kim on the stage. Please welcome her with a big round of applause. 여러분 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Good morning, honorable Mr. and Ms. Speakers and distinguished guests and the audience out there. I can see you all on the line. Hi, everybody. Hi. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to the 2021 Annual World Aviation Conference, and also congratulations to the opening of the Incheon International Airport. My name is Jiyoon Kim, and I'm very honored to be a moderator of the first session. I remember that my parents were among those who so welcomed the opening of the Incheon International Airport 20 years ago. I was a graduate student in the States, and of course I was flying back and forth between the US and Korea. They said it was a really well established and new and clean, grandiose airport. Truth was, they never had to see me up and pick me up at the airport and come to all the way to the airport. That was a real reason. They love the airport, actually. Anyway, it is a really beautiful airport, and everybody understands that. As COVID-19 broke out, there's one thing clear. We cannot go back, and the world has changed for good. Virus left us with many questions, and as a political scientist, I have a question like, is globalization over? And under the crisis like a pandemic, is international cooperation is more important than the national interest? And also, how the pandemic will affect the future? And more importantly, what will the future look like after the pandemic? And we have invited the best person who can give you the answer to all those questions. We have futurist Thomas Frey of DaVinci Institute. He started his career as an engineer at the IBM, where he received 270 awards, which made him the most award-winning engineer. And now he is Google's top-rated futurist speaker. As a founder and executive director of DaVinci Institute, he brings a clear and insightful vision of the future ahead to the audience around the world. Today, Mr. Frey is going to present the lecture titled Recalibrating the Aviation Industry, Entering the Era of Dramatic Change. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Thomas Frey with warm applause.
Thank you. It is a tremendous honor to be here with you today. I actually, last year, I pretty much had my wings clipped because I normally travel to 8 to 10 countries every year. And I was able to travel to Korea one time last year. I arrived in August and left in September. And I got to understand firsthand how the international air transportation industry had changed. And it is quite dramatically how things have shifted. I always look at ways that the world is changing, and I'm always looking for indicators and different signs. And the way I look at things is I look at what's getting traction, because I'm hearing lots of noise out there. I'm hearing lots of things happening over here and lots of things happening over there, but how do you focus on what's actually going to make some changes? And I look at what's getting traction. And it's a way that I use a process that I use for separating the good intentions from the really game-changing technologies. And we're seeing surprisingly a lot of glowing emerging technologies in the middle of all of the pandemic here. But one example I'd like to use here is that in 2016, when Elon Musk introduced the Tesla Model 3, this is what I refer to as the most successful product launch in all history. This was announced through Twitter, and basically people didn't know anything about this car. They didn't know anything what it was going to look like or what any of the specs were for the engine. And all of a sudden, over the next couple months, over 450,000 people put down money to be on a waiting list for this car, and many of them waited for over 2 years to get this car. This, in my mind, is kind of the ultimate product launch that virtually nobody else has ever experienced. But the cars that we drive today have actually been in development for over 120 years, just as the planes that we fly today have been in development for over 100 years. But for the past 120 years, the cars have been designed around one central function, and that's driving. So everybody that's been designing cars for the last 120 years has been focused on that one activity. And so as we move into the driverless era, people are no longer going to be driving. So the people that were designing cars were focused on this human relationship between the human driver and the steering wheel, the human driver and the dashboard and the pedals on the floor. And we have lots of scientific research and studies that were done to kind of enumerate what those relationships were, all these anthropometric measurements and all this statistical data. But as we move into the future, people are no longer going to drive. So the people that are designing cars are focused on other activities that happen in a car. And then you have to ask this question, is it the same job? Now, this is an important question to ask because as we move into the future, we're going to see lots of shifts like this. And we're going to be asking that same question. Is it the same job? We now have the ability to be far more unique, niche focused, and specialized than ever before in history. And then it brings up the question of how do we manage this, our own hyper individuality? So if we look back at how things have transitioned over the past year, what things did you do in 2019 that you couldn't do last year and you can't do yet today? A lot of people went to concerts, they went to festivals, comedy clubs, the cruise industry has been sidelined. A lot of empty skies because not nearly as many aircraft are flying. Parades on Main Street have all been delayed. Professional sport events basically don't have anybody in the audience yet. Movie theaters are pretty much empty still. And then business expos that were driving lots of the transportation industry have also been waylaid. They're not happening as of yet. And so we've tried to create digital versions of each of these things, but we haven't done a good job of that. See, we're a very backward-looking society. We're backward-looking because it's just human nature. We've all personally experienced the past. As we look around us, we see evidence of the past all around us. In fact, all information we come into contact with is essentially history. So the past is very knowable, and yet we're going to be spending the rest of our lives in the future. So it's almost as if we're walking backwards into the future. My job as a futurist is to help turn people around and give them some idea of what the future might hold. So how does the future get created? Well, the future gets created in the minds of everybody around us. We all participate in creating the future, but certainly some of us have much more influence than others. But people make decisions today based on their understanding of what the future holds. So I use this phrase quite a bit. The future creates the present. This is just the opposite of what most people think. Most people think that what we're doing today is somehow going to create the future, but from a little different perspective, it's these images of the future that we hold in our head determine our actions today. So here's the key thing. If we change someone's vision of the future, we change the way they make decisions today. So that's part of my goal. Part of my goal is to help you rethink how the world is taking shape, moving into the future, and change the way you make decisions today. As Google founder Larry Page says, is the main reasons companies fail is that they miss the future. And we pretty much all missed the pandemic, the timing, the implications, how it affect us. We didn't plan that well at all. COVID-19 has been a very dark time in human history, but during times of great chaos come great opportunities. And so I encourage you to start looking on the opportunity side of this equation. See, we're experiencing the biggest job transition in all history. This period that I refer to as the Great Reboot has given us time to think. And as people have sat back and they thought, is this really where I want to be in my life at this point in history? Most people are looking for more meaning and more purpose in their life. And so they're taking on new jobs in hopes of achieving that. So I'm going to go through 10 long-term trends in the aviation industry, and I'll go through them quickly here, and then I'll take a little bit more time on each of them here. But this will be the most expensive crisis in human history, and it definitely affects the aviation industry. We're becoming an increasingly fluid society while simultaneously becoming more connected and more capable and far more accomplished. Working from home is altering the demand for business travel. Airport proximity is taking a lower priority. Air taxis will soon be creating a hyper-individualized air transportation market. Drone deliveries coupled with air taxis will drive demand for many airports. Contact phobia will drive the demand for a touchless travel experience. Autonomous transportation will become the most disruptive technology in all history, and I'll explain that much in more detail here. Tube transportation will cause airports to become mixed modal transportation hubs, much more so than today. And digital twin technology will soon remove pilots from aircrafts and become the monitoring system for all things driverless. All right. Globally, the poor are getting poorer and the vulnerable becoming more vulnerable. At the same time, over 100 million more people have been cast into the ranks of extreme poverty. This will be the most expensive crisis in all human history. Businesses were simply never designed to be shut down and restarted months later. This has been a very trying time. And it's impossible to have this many top-down decisions without creating a massive number of unintended consequences. Our increased awareness of the world means that everybody's watching while we're making our choices and our decisions. Number two, we're becoming an increasingly fluid society while simultaneously becoming more connected, more capable, and far more accomplished. If we look at Starlink as one indicator, 40% of the world doesn't have stable internet today. 4 billion potentially new users, mostly non-English speaking and mostly poor. But entrepreneurs everywhere will have unfettered access to the global internet, irrespective of their government telecom monopolies. So this has monopoly breaking capabilities, but we'll see how that transitions here. Starlink has plans to launch 30,000 satellites, and they currently have over 1,000 in the sky, in space at the moment. But there are a lot of Starlink competitors. Amazon, the Kuiper system is going to launch over 3,200. OneWeb 2000, Iridium 66. Samsung has plans for over 4,600. China has plans for over 10,000. So we're going to see lots of satellites in space and lots of new communication options that we didn't have in the past. This is going to connect us in ways and give us capabilities that we never dreamed of in the past. So competing in a networked world, the key to competitive advantage is no longer the sum of all efficiencies, but the sum of all connections. I encourage you to think through this because this is really a profound statement. Work from home is altering the demand for business travel, and it's changing how we do our work. The rise of remote workers is leading people to reprioritize what is important to them. By focusing on outcomes, employers help people make time count instead of simply counting time. And workers will do what needs to be done rather than wasting time just trying to look busy. There's lots of in a big corporate workspace, there's lots of theater that takes place, and that's pretty much gone now. So the tools that enable asynchronous work are the most important things globally for remote teams. And as we're learning to work from home, we're learning to be much more independent, less dependent on travel from one city to another. And health and well-being have now taken a much higher priority because of COVID. A lack of commute will give workers 25 extra days a year to do other things. World-class people will move to smaller cities, have lower cost of living and higher quality of life. We're seeing that happen as people are making these transitions from one city to the next. So as a result, airport proximity is taking a lower priority because people now have confidence that they can work from home, they can live anywhere, and making these daily, weekly, monthly commutes to the airport is probably going to take a much lower priority for them. So we're seeing a de-urbanization happening as people move from the big cities into the rural communities, and high-income workers then are moving to the outlying locations to support rural economies. The three traffic hubs of North America, Europe, and Asia are going to become much more diffused. In the process, we're going to start seeing air taxis take off. And there's a huge amount of activity in the air taxi space right now. So air taxis are going to soon be creating this hyper-individualized air transportation market. They'll become increasingly common in the 2025 to 2030 time range. Here's a quick video here to give you an idea of how this might happen. Soon, major cities will have over 50,000 drones flying overhead on a daily basis. And cities and counties will employ fleets of scanning drones, and they're going to be creating digital models of their cities as these drones fly overhead. And these digital models will increase in resolution one after another over time. And we're very soon going to start creating what I refer to as search engines for the physical world. Now, these search engines for the physical world, after we create more and more sensors that we add to everything around us, we're going to start seeing sensors that can detect everything from smells to taste to barometric pressures to harmonic vibrations, reflectivity, textures, specific gravity. Now, we won't have to know how these search engines are doing things. We don't have to know the science in the background. All we have to know is that they're getting good results. And so as we start employing search engines for the physical world, we're going to start seeing things, putting in queries into the search engines like, where is that dog with rabies right now? What is the heaviest traffic intersection in the city today? We can do stalker reports. How close did John Doe get to Jane Doe over the last 24 hours? We can do infrastructure report. What was the most dangerous bridge in the city or county today? Drone deliveries coupled with air taxi, will drive demand for many airports. These deliveries are going to take off like a rocket. And as we see this is the video I was referring to just a bit ago. Let's take a moment and watch this. So that's a video produced by Airbus, and that is a possibility of things to come. There's nothing definite about it yet. But as we start developing these air taxis that are flying across cities, we currently don't know how long it will be before the range will get extended, and an air taxi can go between countries, and an air taxi can go between continents and around the world. That may happen in 20 years or 50 years, but those are the type of things that people will be looking at over the coming decades. This is similar to the way that we had mainframe computers, and all of a sudden we took that apart and started having personal computers, and then all of a sudden that personal computers were starting to do things that the mainframes never thought were possible. So many airports are going to start springing up around cities. Some will be on top of tall buildings. Some will be on the ground. They're going to come in different shapes and sizes until we create some industry standards. But these will be happening relatively soon as we try to control the airspace with all this air traffic. And if we have 50,000 drones flying over a city, we're going to need lots of control over that airspace. Number 7, contact phobia will drive the demand for a touchless travel experience. Contact phobia will permeate our thinking for generations to come. It comes with the deep-seated paranoia. Shaking hands has suddenly become a symbol for you're an idiot. Autonomous transportation, this is number 8, autonomous transportation will become the most disruptive technology in all history. Driverless technology will be super disruptive, and by 2025, electric vehicles will have a 1,500 kilometer range and less than a 10-minute recharge time. Now, those things become a true game changer. And at the same time, internal combustion engines will be in their waning years. And some people are predicting that we'll see an end to production of internal combustion engines by 2025. But very soon, cars with steering wheels will seem as outdated as dial telephones. But the thing that we haven't been paying attention to in the driverless world, as we have autonomous transportation, we're going to also have driverless mobile businesses that take off. So if you start to get your mind around how this is going to transition, the business world, rather than having people come to them, suddenly you can go to where the people are. So if you need something from the store late in the evening, you can summon the store to come to you. A fully autonomous convenience store will park out front. You can go down and pick out what you need. There's not going to be any staff on this thing. It will automatically charge you for whatever things you take. And as soon as you leave, then it'll take off and go to the next stop. But it's not just about storefronts. It's also about having driverless mobile offices and driverless mobile conferences and board meetings. if you have a cooking school as an example, you can drive around the city, pick up your students throughout the day, and then be demonstrating your cooking skills, and then at the end of the day, then drop off all the people. We're going to see driverless hair shops, driverless dog grooming places, driverless banks, and driverless bicycle repair, bicycle rental, nail salons, hair salons, retail stores, and they're going to come in lots of different shapes and sizes. We'll have evening activities and entertainment. We can set up in remote locations, have robotic bartenders serving drinks. And anytime there's a gathering of people, these businesses can set up and start doing business. Anytime there's a parade on Main Street, or a basketball tournament or a softball tournament, they can set up and do business. Having a conference in a remote location, sometime in the future, you'll be able to summon remote hotel rooms to come and set up at that location. And then once the event is over, they will all leave and go to the next conference. These can also be configured in a way so that they're remote hospital beds. And so anytime there's a major crisis, these things can travel around to where that crisis is taking place. The medical world is testing people right now with their mobile units that they can send out to their houses. And they can test them in lots of interesting ways, lots of diagnostic tests that are run on the individuals. The mall of the future will very likely be a large warehouse that every morning they will open up, and they will have these driverless mobile businesses set up shop and start doing business in that open space. Now, tube transportation is going to cause airports to become mixed modal transportation hubs. Tube transportation, I think, will look forward to working with airports to as part of their network. Seeing this integration, I think, will be encouraging. Right now, we have lots of tube transportation pilot projects going on around the world, but very soon we're going to start seeing these take off here, and we're going to see countries around the world want to be part of this network. This could be a very large project as it gets built out over time. Now, digital twin technology, this is our last trend, will soon remove pilots from aircrafts and become the monitoring system for all things driverless. So digital twin technology, once we put sensors all over a large piece of equipment, whether it's a tractor or whether it's a cruise ship or whether it's a turbine in a power plant, we can monitor these pieces of equipment remotely on the other side of the world, and we can tell how the operation is going. And then over time, we're going to soon be able to anticipate when things start to break down, and we can then do repair work before an actual breakdown occurs. Now, the next step in digital twin technology is remote robotics, and we're seeing that happen with the DaVinci surgical device that allows doctors to be a long distance away from the patient that they're working on. And this will lead to lots of other activities, like being able to remotely operate farm equipment or construction equipment. And how much longer will we still need to have pilots in the aircraft that are flying? Will we soon be able to have pilots on the ground monitoring these aircrafts and then operating them? And then how long before digital twin technology is common with humans and doctors can monitor us from a long ways away and tell us what's wrong if we're having some problems? Even in the darkest of times, people of extraordinary character have lived among us, guiding us on a pathway to a better future. So countries will invest heavily in mega projects to re-employ their people. And we're starting to see this happen right now. So we're going to go into this age of mega projects, and this is going to open the door for lots of change and lots of possibilities. I'm just going to quickly mention these 8 different mega projects. The 4 bridges projects: colonizing Mars, tube transportation, floating islands, mass energy storage, global Wi-Fi, whole Earth genealogy, and global blockchain infrastructure. So the 4 bridges project, there's 4 key bridges that are clearly missing: the Bering Strait, bridge across the Bering Strait, across the Darien Gap that connects North America and South America, the Korean-Japan Friendship Tunnel that would connect Japan to the Asian continent, and the Gibraltar Tunnel that would connect Africa with Europe. Currently, the Hong Kong-Macau bridge is the longest bridge in the world. This is 55 kilometers long, but this will pale in comparison to some of the engineering projects we're going to be tackling in the near future. If we decide to colonize Mars, there's lots of effort going into making this happen right now. That could be a huge industry on Earth for things that happen on Mars. Global tube transportation infrastructure. Again, there's people working on this, and this is going to happen eventually. This could unfold as turn into the world's largest infrastructure project ever on planet Earth. It could take 50, 80, 100 years to build this out, employing hundreds of millions of people. Floating islands and island cities. There's different groups that are working on this. The Oceanics concept has floating islands that can survive a Category 5 hurricane, and they're looking at populating cities on the ocean of 10,000 people at a time. Mass energy storage systems, we're seeing some of these build out right now, but our ability to store power from one day to the next is crucial for us to manage the power systems on Earth here. Global Wi-Fi is unfolding with Starlink project, and along with a lot of the other competing processes going on. Creating the world's first space hotel. The launch date is supposed to be 2027. We'll see if that happens. And global blockchain infrastructure. This is very soon, blockchain is going to be integrated into all of our systems online, and this will just be in the background, and we'll even stop using the word blockchain as a result of this. But this will enable us to create this global trust network. So for businesses everywhere, the first order of business will be to build and rebuild trust, because there's so much uncertainty today as a result of COVID and the rest of the pandemic world. As William Gibson says, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So we're entering a period of unprecedented opportunity. So why is this so important? Because humanity will change more in the next 20 years than in all human history. At the same time, risk factors will increase exponentially, and our children's children who haven't even been born yet are depending on you. They're depending on the people that are listening to this to make good decisions. That's incumbent upon all of us. As Steve Jobs said, right now is one of those moments that you are influencing the future. But sometimes our best efforts just look a lot like this. Yeah, pretty much just like that. For any of you that are interested, my latest book, Epiphany Z, is now available in Korean, in Chinese, in English, and it's also available in audiobook form. And any of you that are interested in the Futurati podcast that Trent Fowler and I do, go to futuratipodcast.com. And for more information, feel free to sign up for our free newsletter. And I thank you very much for inviting me to be with you today. Thank you.
Our futurist Thomas Frey, and I have some questions. This is actually a Q&A session, so I have asked some questions. It's my
All right.
question. Yes, it's my question, and also we have collected some questions beforehand. First of all, I believe you have been asked this question repeatedly in the past, and also I remember you wrote some time in the past that by 2030, 2 billion jobs will disappear. And the aviation industry, although it looks like a heavily high-tech industry, but the vast majority of the employment is in the service area, so we cannot really be an exception. So already heavily hit by the pandemic. And it seems that according to you, the things will not getting any better. So what should be done at the individual level and at the government level?
Yeah, we're gonna push really hard to create new jobs, but actually, let me explain that a little bit more. 2 billion jobs are going to go away, but we're going to have more than that created. This emerging technology is giving us new capabilities to create micro businesses and micro industries at a faster rate than ever before. And I actually think that we're be moving quickly into an era of superemployment. Now, as I say, superemployment, the big difference is that a lot of these won't be full-time jobs. A lot of them will be part-time gigs. And so one of the big things missing is we're not teaching people how to be gig workers, how to manage the business of you. That's a skill that's not being taught in most colleges today or most education systems. And so becoming a good freelancer is going to become an important skill in the future as we wrestle with lots of opportunity. So I actually am very positive on the future. I think we have a bright world ahead, but we have to go through this nasty transition here.
Okay, the next question is, actually you mentioned the self-driving drones and everything, and I think it's already related to the pandemic crisis as well. Because I also read your article about how to prevent this kind of a pandemic from happening again, and one of the solution was maybe we can develop like VR or AR screening of the person, so see if the person has a virus in the body or something like that. So it
Right.
actually alarms me because we can be a little bit more cautious about the private information because under this situation, we already sacrificed or gave up a lot of our private information in the name of the public health. And the government's collected
Right.
a lot of information, like logistics, whereabouts ourselves, and where we dine out, and because we do all the QR screening all the time.
Right.
So
Right.
what should be done in the democratic society? I mean, I don't really think the expanded government power will retract or back off.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, this is a very delicate balancing act that we have to go through here. So the idea of being able to scan a population of people walking through an airport and find out if somebody is infected in some way, I think that's an important piece of technology. I'm not a big fan of the idea of vaccine passports. I think that opens the door for this slippery slope of that next year you'll have to get your flu vaccine added to your passport, and then after that it might be some other COVID-23 that we're dealing with, and so it opens the door for the airline industry working as a bit like pawns for the pharmaceutical industry as we're pushing vaccinations one after another. So there's lots of dangers there, and the idea of with all this technology, we're putting more and more power in the hands of individuals. And so part of the trade-off is as we have more power and more capabilities, this power and capabilities can go in the hands of devious people. And so we have to be aware of what's going on. We have to be very vigilant, more vigilant than ever before. And that's where a lot of the authorities are erring on the side of transparency when lots of people are wanting more privacy, and that's where the danger comes in. And I'm pretty sure I don't have good answers for this right now. So I wish I had better answers.
Well, fair enough. My last question is a little bit digress from the aviation industry. The Korea is suffering from the low birth rate. You probably heard of it. And
Right.
some projections are saying that, well, the Korean population will cut in half less than in 50 years. Any advice?
Yeah. As I understand, this is cultural issues, and young ladies that I've talked to in Korea don't really seem to be too interested in having children. Right now, the demographics of the world is shifting rapidly, and currently, over half of all the babies born in the world are born in 6 countries. These 6 countries include Angola, Congo, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Pakistan. Now, if it continues at this rate, then half of the world is going to be coming from these 6 countries. And these are 6 countries that have been rather ignored by the rest of the world. I think we have lots of chances, lots of opportunity now to turn that around. Some of the cultural thinking, the cultural differences of the past, I think, and this is an ideal turning point for Korea to look at what incentives might there be to put in place to encourage young people to start families, and creating opportunities for people to kind of raise these families in a way that's different than we raised families in the past. Once again, I'm not sure that I have a good solution to this problem, but I do encourage the good people of Korea to focus on this one, as this will have very long-term effects.
Okay. Well, I hate to say that, but it's time to wrap up because we have time constraints. It was very informative and fun as well, and I would like to express my gratitude to our futurist Thomas Frey, and I believe you out there, that our audience also feel the same way. It was a great and wonderful lecture and also the discussion. Well, thank you very much for being with us today, Mr.
Yeah, well,
Thomas Frey.
thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I wish you the best. The Incheon airport has always been one of my favorite around the world, and I look forward to the next time I can come there.
Well, definitely. Thank you so much. And please join me thanking Mr. Frey with a warm applause. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, and stay well. Thanks.
네, 오늘 특별 대담을 위해 귀한 시간 내주시고 또 많은 의견 나눠주신 김지윤 박사님과 토마스 프레이 소장님께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀 드립니다. 고맙습니다. Thank you very much for the fruitful time. We would like to give our sincere gratitude to Director Thomas Frey and Dr. Jiyoon Kim for sharing their valuable ideas. COVID-19 has changed our daily lives a lot, and it seems like, in particular, the aviation industry seems to be most affected. However, as Director Thomas Frey said, we are entering an era of unprecedented opportunities, and we look forward to bringing the aviation industry to further innovation and development by taking the post-corona era as another opportunity. 다시 한번 감사의 말씀 드립니다.